You're listening to an episode of What on Earth is Going On? This show was originally broadcast on the radio at CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. It is now available to you in this format with all spoken content unabridged. For more information, visit wogoshow.com. That's WOEGO show.com. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to What on Earth is Going On, where we take you beneath the headlines to discuss the events, characters, forces, and ideas that shape the human story today. Climate change, free trade, democracy, you name it. Why are things happening? How did they come to be? And where are we all headed? If you have any questions or feedback, please get in touch. You can find this show online at wogoshow.com. That's WOEGO show.com, or on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Download episodes on whatever podcast app that you use, and most of all, make your voice heard in the ongoing discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. Joining me in a bit is Dr. Stephen Thomas of Queen's University. He is the director of a brand new master's program in the Smith School of Business that is, for now, one of its kind, but surely is the vanguard of the future of education. The program? Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence. And that sounds pretty neat. We're going to have an excellent conversation coming up. Now, artificial intelligence is undeniably in our future. It's already a big piece of the puzzle of our present, but it's important to distinguish fantasy, science fiction, and fear-mongering from reality. Right now, the artificial intelligence market is worth billions of dollars, and while it's hard to predict where things will go, nobody is using figures less than trillions of dollars when they talk about the size of the market in just a few years. Almost all of this innovation and application is in something called artificial narrow intelligence, or ANI. The algorithms that figure out what ads to show you on YouTube, the computers that beat humans at chess or Jeopardy or Go, or the robot that can assemble an IKEA chair now straight out of the box. These are all forms of ANI. They are extremely capable of learning and executing a highly specific task. But beyond that, they are quite frankly useless. Virtually all thinkers in artificial intelligence agree that ANI is not just going to suddenly become self-aware, grow red eyes, and try to annihilate the entire human race. No, that is the job of what is called artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And this leap could be many decades away, if it is even possible. And it is in this sphere that science fiction takes off like there is no tomorrow. And not just science fiction, but every field of study can turn its gaze toward the rise of a superintelligent AGI, one so smart and so rapidly evolving that we cannot keep it contained, let alone attempt to control it. We would become creators of our own God. It's the same as if an advanced alien species showed up out of nowhere. What would it mean for human society, for our conception of self, for religion, history, science, philosophy? There are some who believe that a divinely powerful, near-omniscient AI is inevitable. As sure a bet as dinosaurs going extinct or human empires declining and falling. To them, the emergence of an AI that will rule over humanity is as natural as evolution, and maybe even is evolution. Here is a famous thought experiment which shows you just a hint of the thinking around artificial intelligence. To some, this is the definition of a dangerous idea. It's called Rocco's basilisk. Rocco is the pseudonym for the person who described the thought experiment a few years ago in an online forum called Less Wrong. And a basilisk is the mythical creature who can cause death with a single glance. The premise is this. If the rise of an all-powerful AGI is inescapable, as many predict, then it's likely that when it does take over, it would punish those who did not help it get there. Are you following so far? Okay, so you're thinking, I just need to make sure that an evil computer doesn't dominate humanity in my lifetime. But If an AI overlord is as powerful as we think it could be, if it could know us better than we know ourselves, could know the past and the future with exact atomic precision and infinite scale, then it doesn't matter if we die before it rises. It could use our fingerprints left on social media. It could use everything that it knows about our past to construct a digital file of us. And then it could use, say, a 3D printer to resurrect whomever it wishes. And then it would punish those who didn't help it come into being. But why would it do this, you ask? To blackmail you, right now. You who is just hearing this idea, with the threat of damnation, to incentivize you to help it come into being. In fact, the more you think about this dangerous idea, the more likely it is that the future almighty AI, the basilisk, will have an incentive to find and resurrect and punish you. Now that you've heard the idea, you're susceptible to future blackmail. It's glanced at you just once, and that's all it needs. This is a twist of Pascal's wager, whereby you might as well believe in God because you gain everything if you're right and lose nothing if you're wrong. The trouble with this one is, unlike Pascal's wager, if you work to bring about the AGI that would punish those who did not help it come to be, then you might just succeed. Are you confused? Me too. But the thought experiment is instructive of the world-shaking potential of artificial intelligence. Forget about it being the new smartphone or new industrial revolution. AI is more likely than not to alter our entire reality. Artificial intelligence could start by making our lives easier, but it will almost certainly end in ways that we cannot possibly anticipate. But anyways, shake all of that off, look away from the basilisk. It's time to return to where AI is right now, especially in the world of business. Dr. Stephen Thomas is the director of the new Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence at Queen's University, a first-of-its-kind program in the Smith School of Business. Dr. Thomas ran a big data startup firm and now works extensively in computer science, where he focuses on databases, data analytics, and natural language processing. Dr. Thomas has twice been named Professor of the Year in the Queen's MMA program. Dr. Thomas, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, so artificial intelligence is one of the big levers of change in our world. The technology is already having a major impact in our daily lives, even if we can't see it, or rather appreciate it. Businesses and governments are spending vast sums of money and devoting hefty resources to get ahead of the curve with AI, and while nobody can predict its future, it's clear that it could transform just about everything. From the way that we conceive our homes to the way we conceive our democracy, from the future of transportation and energy to the future of warfare. These are just a few of the things that could change, and there are those who warn us against going too quickly or too far, that as a species we are perhaps on a path to our own obsolescence. Whatever's going to happen, this is big. Professor Thomas, you're in a unique position to answer this question. What on earth is going on?
Okay, yes, so you're right about everything you just said, and there is a lot going on all at once. So let's try to break it down. So it kind of started a few years ago when academic researchers and the big tech companies, they started working together and making a lot of progress in AI. So we're talking little things like improving the image recognition rate from 87% to 92%, but also huge things like making chatbots actually feasible for consumers. Mm-hmm. So lots of progress being made on that front. And organizations and businesses started to take notice of this, and they wanted in on the action. Some of them wanted to increase the bottom line. Some of them just don't want to be left behind. Some have no idea what they're doing. And so organizations are starting to get involved with varied success. Then at the same time, governments are also taking notice, and they see this as a way to boost their economy. They think that if they're the leader in AI, then this will be a huge opportunity for them to be leaders, increase trade, all this kind of stuff. So we see this in China, has declared that they want to be the AI powerhouse of the world. France has recently announced that they want to be a big AI center. The US has done the same, and of course Canada is also saying they want to be a leader in AI. universities at the same time, they're starting to take notice. And we can talk about this later, but that's basically what our program is here at Queens, is we realize that AI is real. It's here to stay. Businesses are going to use it, and the workforce is currently uneducated for the most part. And we need to create new programs and enhance existing programs to teach every person what is AI, how to use it, how to work with it. And at the same time, we got startups popping up left and right. It's easy for them to get funding, partly because of the big hype cycle going on right now, but also just because there's so much technology available, it's so easy for them to get started. So we've got startups popping up left and right, filling niche holes. Mm-hmm. And then finally, we have tech companies, the big tech companies like the Googles, the Microsofts, the IBMs, providing tools, technology, a lot of it in the cloud. So all of these things coming together mm-hmm. is kind of it's a perfect storm, mm-hmm. and that's why everyone's hearing so much about AI right now. Mm-hmm. Now, while it is incredibly hyped up and possibly overhyped by the media, I think it is real. It is going to change every industry, like you were saying. It's going to touch everybody's life every single day. And I would say that in the next 5-10 years, we're going to look back and think, what could we have been doing without AI?
One thing that I find really interesting about artificial intelligence is the fact that what has burgeoned really in artificial intelligence is data. The amount of data we have, the quality of data we have. And we've been talking as a civilization about AI for decades now. We have the Terminator movies in the 80s and 90s. We have science fiction writers going back to, I think, the 50s and 60s talking about a super intelligent computer that could rule humanity. HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey being an example of an AI gone bad. But what has really unleashed the potential, it seems to me, is these big companies like Google, Facebook, Apple that have acquired immense amounts of data, and that it's data that is driving machine learning and AI today. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. So, and a good example of that is Amazon. So Amazon is one of the world's biggest companies, and they make close to $100 billion a year. Mm-hmm. And one of their big pieces of AI, which has been around for about 10-15 years, is their recommender system. So when you go online, you're shopping, it'll say, do you want to buy this? Mm. And Amazon says that about 40 to 50% of all their sales are based on that recommender system. And you'd think, well, if they're making $50 billion a year from this algorithm, they would never release it to the public. Mm. But they did. That's exactly what they did. They open sourced the recommender system. But what they didn't open source is the data. So what Amazon has is 25 years of purchase data for millions of customers. And this is incredibly valuable. This is what makes Amazon Amazon. It's not the algorithm. It's not the computers. It's not that. It's the data. Mm. And a lot of tech companies are starting to realize this. Data is what makes a model go from good to great.
So can we dig into that? So first of all, what is artificial intelligence in the realm that we're talking about, and what is done with this data that is so important? Why can't we just say design a computer program that's really smart? What's the difference between what we normally think of as computer programs and an artificial intelligence?
Yeah, good question. So artificial intelligence it's a broad umbrella term, but it's basically referring to any computer program that tries to reason as a human would, tries to make decisions. Now, artificial intelligence can kind of be broken down into several areas. One is robotics and autonomous cars. Mm. Another is computer vision. Another is natural language processing and trying to talk like a human and understand. Another is planning and search optimization. But the big one that most people are talking about is machine learning. And what machine learning is, it's a new way to write programs. So before, human beings would write programs manually with a bunch of if-then-else statements. So, for example, if we were going to write say we're a bank and we're trying to write a fraud detection algorithm for credit card transactions. We want to determine in real time if a credit card transaction is fraudulent.
Right.
A human being would sit down and write some if statements. If the transaction occurs more than 500 miles away from the person's home address, then it might be fraud. And if two transactions happened less than 5 seconds apart, then it might be fraudulent. So humans would be writing all these if statements, and it works, but it's incredibly labor intensive. It doesn't change with time and new data, and if it does change, it's a human changing it. Machine learning is a totally different approach. Machine learning, there are no if then else statements written by humans. What you do is you give the algorithm some data, and you say, here's a bunch of transactions that were fraudulent, and here's a bunch that were not. And for each transaction, you have things like its location, its time, its amount, what they bought, where they bought it, all this stuff. And the machine learns, quote unquote, which transactions were fraudulent, or what makes a transaction fraudulent and what doesn't. So it'll learn things automatically, things like, oh, if a transaction is too far away from this home address, then it's probably fraudulent. So it learned that on its own. The powerful thing here is whatever's in the data, that's what the algorithm will learn. It's not based on any preconceived notions that the human might have. And if the data is updated, then what the machine knows is updated automatically.
So it's almost radically empirical. Like it's being so empirical that it's ignoring rationality, and it's saying whatever the data shows is what I'm going to believe. So if the data is corrupt, then of course it's going to have a corrupt conclusion.
Exactly, yes.
So when we talk about the data that's fed into say a machine learning program, is it possible sometimes that the data might be not corrupt, but lead it to conclusions that we might not anticipate?
Yes. So biased training data. This is a big issue, actually. There's some famous examples. One is in HR resume screening. So some people wanted to automate the process of taking thousands of resumes and narrowing it down to 2 or 3 interviews. And this is a real problem that big companies have. So what they did is they took a bunch of past resumes, and they knew which ones they ended up interviewing and which ones they did not. So they could feed this into a machine learning algorithm. The algorithm learned. But unfortunately, after they deployed the model, it started only letting through white guys into the interview. It was highly racist.
Right.
So the media said, hey, machine learning is racist. But I think as what you're getting at is, it's not the algorithm or the idea of machine learning, it's the data in this case was biased.
Right.
And why was the data biased? Well, it's because the managers who were doing the hiring in the past, they were biased.
Right.
So the machine learning algorithms, they're really not that smart. They have no context. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they should be doing. They don't know what's good or bad. They are not even a they. They're just repeating what they see in the training data. So if the training data is perfectly just and balanced, so will the model. But if it's biased in any way, for any reason, whether intentionally or not, it's going to repeat those biases in the future.
This is a fascinating subject, and I don't want to go too far down the tangent with it, but it can also reveal the unconscious biases that we don't even know we have. So there's an example from a couple of years ago of a machine learning experiment, and they fed this AI program I think 6 million words from the English language, and they fed it actual books and literature and writing, and used that just as raw data, and they saw what the computer came up with in the end and asked it questions. So for example, one of the questions it asked was, man is to computer science as woman is to blank. And the computer filled in the blank with housewife. So does that mean that the computer thinks that based on all human data that women are housewives? Well, no, it means that the language that we use unconsciously biases, say, females to housework. That's just in our language. It's in our day-to-day use of that language. And I just find that absolutely fascinating, not just because these are biases that we need to overcome, but it can reveal the biases we didn't even know we had.
Yeah, and in a way, it's almost a way to quantify the bias out there, because it's easy to maybe say, oh, language isn't biased, and as a society we're progressive. But if you give it to machine learning algorithm and it says these kind of things, then that's hard evidence that actually maybe the language we use isn't so progressive.
Right. So what are the uses for this kind of machine learning, for example?
Okay, yeah. So basically every industry. So I can just list off a few. You tell me when to stop. So in the banking industry, you can use it, like I said, to predict fraud on credit card transaction, and it works about 20 to 50% better than the human rules. You can use it to predict which customers are going to leave. which customer are going to stop using the credit card. And you can reach out to them and make them a special offer to keep them, because everyone knows, it's a lot more expensive to get a new customer than it is to maintain a customer. In the health industry, you can use computer vision to scan x-rays and CT scans and find tumors. And this is one application where the accuracy rates are actually better than humans at this point. They're so good that we have such great training data. We can tell the machine learning algorithm, all these are images of no cancer, and these are all images of cancer. And it learned really, really well because they're very high quality images. And the other good thing there is they can do them a lot faster than, than humans. In simple things like sports, you can do sports analytics to predict which play to do, which lineup to run. You could build chatbots for sports fans to ask about statistics, or even sports stadiums can have a chatbot for arena logistics. Where's the bathroom, or something like that.
Right.
And speaking of chatbots, there's a lot of applications for that. So the biggest one is in retail. Your first line customer service could be a chatbot. So, it'll be able to solve 80% of people's questions satisfactorily, instantly, without having to wait for a human. If you can't solve it with the chatbot, then it gets escalated to a human. So that's a really big one. In the mining and kind of the deep mining rocks and minerals, we're seeing it being used to predict where to drill, and to move some of these mining equipment infrastructures, costs $1 million to go drill in a new place in the mine field. So you really want to be sure. And even if you're 1 or 2% more accurate in where you're drilling, it's going to have a big effect on the bottom line. In retail, there's something called sentiment analysis. So to automatically monitor social media and online media about a particular brand and predict, how are people feeling about the brand or my competitor's brand. So that's a big one in retail. Also, in retail, trying to predict the probability that someone's going to buy another item, given that they're buying this item.
Right.
So say if someone's checking out with the Barbie, maybe you want to offer them some Skittles. Maybe the data says that that's a very strong correlation or association there. So, these kind of things with so a lot of business. So the big players now are the big adopters of AI so far: banking, retail, and of course the big internet tech giants.
Sure.
Kind of the next line I would say would be health is getting in there. Still a lot to be done, a lot of low-hanging fruit. Telecoms can get in there. The mining, agriculture could be a big one, but they're just not there yet. Some of the slower adopters at this point would be government and education. Not that there's not a lot that can be done. It's just that these are kind of slower moving entities.
Right. So what is it seems to me like artificial intelligence is a technological revolution on the order of, say, mass manufacturing and assembly lines in the early 20th century, that anybody who doesn't adopt this technology is going to fall behind very quickly and become obsolete. So does that apply to everything, do you think, in the business world, or soon will be?
I think so, yes. And a lot of people are saying exactly that. This is AI is the new, or data is the new oil. AI is the new power, or AI is the new electricity. You might have heard that being said. And even though it does kind of feel the hype machine, I agree with it. Because think of a bank. Think about 2 big banks in Toronto. One of them is using AI left and right. They're acquiring more customers. They're keeping their customers happier. They're doing things with less cost. They have machines working around the clock, making everything better. The other one's doing things the old school way, using manager's gut, doing things manually. Which ones do you think is gonna win out?
Right.
And so the businesses that are going to survive are the ones who adopt AI not only the most quickly, but also the best.
Right.
And I think that's not only true in banking. I think we're going to see that in literally every single industry.
So the Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence program at Queen's University is one of a kind and first of its kind. What are you trying to do with it? Why is it important to have this now? And what will students in the program get from it?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, it's incredibly important to have now. In fact, we could have had it 5-10 years ago. But we are first to the market. What we're seeing, we have a great advisory board at Smith, comprised of directors, of vice principals, CEOs of companies across Canada and even the world. And what they're telling us they're seeing is their companies want to adopt AI. They want to get this in practice. They want to use it. And they're hiring computer scientists and engineers who can build the tools. But there's a gap between the C-level suite and the engineers. The C-suite doesn't really know what they want or how it's going to integrate into the strategy or the vision of the company. And the engineers also don't know that. And the engineers can build whatever you tell them to build, but they don't know what to build. And when they get in a meeting, they're kind of talking past each other because they speak completely different languages. So what's needed is this translator in the middle, a manager who knows the business side and knows business strategy, business 101, marketing, everything. But they also truly understand AI and how it works, when to use certain kinds of models, when is the model working good enough, when is it not, what are the trade-offs, and basically tell the engineers what to do, assess what they're doing, help them, and then translate it back into the business process to actually, like I said, decrease cost, increase revenues, affect the bottom line. And so right now, no educational program in North America, at least, focuses on that. It's either focused on the tech part, the programming, the building the robots, things like that, or just strictly business, or maybe some MBAs have a bit of a tech focus, but only very high level.
Right.
So we needed something in the middle that is both. And from all the interviews we've done with executives and businesses in various industries, everyone said they need a lot of this kind of manager.
Right, because they know that this is going to change pretty much everything, and they need to get ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
So when we talk about AI and how it's going to transform business everywhere and in almost every way, how do we conceive of our world changing? I mean, what is my life going to look like in 10 years as opposed to today? When I go onto my computer, or I go to the bathroom, or I go to work, or I drive my car, how is AI going to become present in my life that it currently isn't?
That's a great question. I think about this sometimes. I daydream a little bit. I think your life is going to become easier in a lot of ways. You're going to have to just try less hard to get what you want. So I don't know if you have a Google Home or a Siri or anything like that.
Not yet.
Okay, I got one for Christmas, and it's great. But yeah, this has already transformed my life a little bit. I'm making breakfast, and I can say, "Hey Google, what's the weather?" and it just tells me. And I can say, "What's the news?" and it starts playing it. So I just ask, and it just kind of appears for me.
Right.
Self-driving cars, same thing. We're just going to get in a car, and it's just going to start driving. We don't have to back up, and we have to get the map out or anything like that. We don't have to get our phone out to get the map. It's just going to take us where we want, and we can read a magazine or take a nap.
Right.
And when we interact with businesses, it's going to be much easier. We're going to get what we want much quicker. Businesses are going to anticipate our needs. In fact, Amazon is thinking about, they know so much about you and about people like you.
Right.
It can predict what you're going to buy before you even buy it. So I don't know if you've heard of this, but Amazon's considering a model where they just send you what they think you need, and then you just send back if you actually didn't need it.
No kidding.
Yeah, so you don't even have to shop anymore. And I could definitely see that with, like a grocery delivery service. It'd be very, I don't want to say easy, but possible to predict what a family is going to consume in any given week. Just send it to them. Don't make them go get it.
Do you think that has implications for free will, for the sense that I am my own determined being, based on my own choices? But if someone else or something else, as in an AI, knows me better than I know myself, what does that mean for my own conception of myself?
That's a good question. That's a tricky question. That gets more into kind of the philosophy,
right?
Not only of AI, but just philosophy in general. And I think about my kids, too. I have 3 young kids. They're going to grow up with all these tools and technology. Yeah. They're never going to know a difference. So I don't even know, when they go camping, for example, and we unplug, are they going to enjoy it? Are they going to be completely lost? Are they going to feel naked? I don't know what it means. I think that's kind of the biggest unsolved question in my mind is, and it's kind of it's a loop too, because as AI becomes more ingrained in our lives, humans will change. So the AI will have to change to meet this new human, and then so on.
Right.
And I think there'll be some faction of society that rebels, wants to go back to simpler times, maybe just for kind of Big Brother type reasons. Maybe they don't like being connected, or it's too much, but I think most people are going to embrace it. What we've seen so far is most people embrace technology. They like the added convenience.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be left behind. And a lot of it's just plain fun.
Sure, yeah.
But how it ends up, really affecting a human on an individual level, that's a great question, and I can't wait to find out.
Well, it can also affect the kind of jobs that are available to us, too. I mean, we've already seen massive disruption due to automation, but AI is another layer to that. AI can help firms hire people and fire people, knowing where there are inefficiencies, knowing which person is going to stay for the longest and contribute the most. AI can also make a company so efficient that it doesn't need to have so many people. Some have argued that people will be working as the people, and you use the word in the loop. People will be in the loop with AI. They will be part of the mechanism, so to speak. Is that a future job creator, or is this a bit of wishful thinking?
I think there's a lot of fear about job loss to AI, and I think a lot of it's blown out of proportion. I think there will be job loss. There will be some jobs that are just simply so simple and repetitive and very well defined that a machine can do it all,
right,
given enough training data. But I think that'll be relatively rare. It won't actually affect the economy in any real level. It'll be thousands of people, not millions of people. I think most people's jobs will be enhanced by AI and actually make their jobs more enjoyable and make them more effective at their jobs.
Right.
So instead of manually reading through 1 million resumes, it'll show you the best 10. You can choose from there.
Right.
And how would you rather spend your time, talking to these 10 people in great depth and really getting to know them,
right,
or skimming 1,000 resumes, making
right,
a bad choice, and that kind of stuff.
Doing what essentially a machine does and feeling like you're a machine and doing it.
Right.
Your example of going on a camping trip with your kids is fascinating to me, because I've often thought about technology as changing, for example, how memory works. So I no longer need to remember a phone number, but I also don't need to remember directions on a map. I don't need to remember my SIN, my SIN, my SI number, however you want to put it. I just don't like to say SIN number.
Right.
I don't have to remember any of the details about myself, about my life, but that doesn't mean I'm not remembering. I'm still remembering other things, maybe things that are more valuable. Maybe I'm opening up my mind to other things. But your example with the camping trip was interesting because it may redefine choice too. So if Amazon is sending me something that I didn't even realize I needed until I got it, now, well, great, of course, this is perfect. This is everything that I need. Then is my choice eroded, or is it just changed? By not having to do that anymore, am I free to choose to do other things? So when I go on a camping trip, maybe I might feel lost without something making a choice for me, but I'm not a choiceless being. I've just changed into something else, that it actually enhances me as opposed to reduces me. But there are arguments on both sides of this.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's kind of what I was talking about with, as Amazon shifts to this delivery first, shop later model, their data is going to change, because now it doesn't have the data of people going to their website, browsing a bunch of products, and then selecting one. It just all it knows is it sent a bunch of stuff to someone and it worked. And so where's the original data coming from of people's preferences? Because you won't know what they like and don't like anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of a moving target. It's a fascinating question. It's really hard to know how humans are going to react as this gets more and more ingrained. I think, though, that our choice is still there. So go back to the Amazon example. We still will choose to accept the product or not. It's still our choice.
Right.
All Amazon is doing is trying to skip some steps for us.
Right.
Some steps that I know I personally don't enjoy. I don't personally enjoy looking at a bunch of stuff I don't want just to get to the one thing I do want.
Right.
And some people, my sister loves shopping. She looks at every shirt on every rack, but I don't like that. And there's nothing to stop my sister from going and looking at every shirt in every rack. And for camping, you're talking about memories. So when I think back of camping, really what you enjoy, what I remember enjoying is just kind of the time spent with another human being, around the campfire and stuff like that. My memories of happiness don't revolve around remembering a phone number or remembering how to get places. Humans used to have to do that. Mm-hmm. I think in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, everyone knew a bunch of phone numbers off the top of their head. And they knew the city like the back of their hand so they could get places. And now you're right. Even me, I'm mid-30s, so I grew up in a time without any of this technology. But as of now, I don't remember anyone's phone number except mine and my wife's, because I have to write it down on some forms a lot.
Right.
And I've lived in Kingston almost 10 years, and there's parts of it I have no idea how to get around because I just follow the phone.
Yeah. And I think that hasn't led to some kind of apocalypse in our mind. We aren't incredibly stupid now that we don't remember anything. In fact, we're smarter in other areas. I guess my question is about if AI or if Amazon knows so much about me that when it sends me a product, I don't even question it because it's just so perfect. And this is something we can't even imagine right now because it's unprecedented. But we're talking about a machine with empirical data that is so finely tuned to who I am that it knows me better than I know myself. So that if I were even to say no, I know that I'm actually saying no to myself, to my deeper urges or who I really am, because I know that, well, Amazon must know me better than I might know myself, so I might as well accept it. And fast forward a little bit later, well, surely we're going to get to a place that not only do we not question it, but we're not even, I would say, even allowed to question it. I guess maybe using the word allowed isn't even correct, but that the conception of wanting and not wanting may even erode with time. And I know this is a philosophical question, but we're talking about a system that knows me and knows everybody and knows our society and our connections with each other better than we could possibly know it ourselves. And what are the ramifications of that?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, and you can fast forward to a time where, let's say our kids, they never even knew, they just get things in the mail from Amazon.
Right.
They never even ever had the opportunity to go look for what they wanted and then decide.
Or even create a username and password. It's just there.
It's just there.
Yeah.
And it's good enough. Question is that a better model or a worse model? It's, it's certainly more efficient. Less time is wasted shopping. Less time is wasted just in general. You just get what you need when you need it. So on that level, it's great. What it does do is, if society crumbles and tech breaks, or let's say technology is wiped out and you're stuck on a desert island, these individuals will be very ill-equipped to survive on their own.
Right.
I don't know if you ever saw the show Lost.
I've never actually seen it, but I've heard a lot about it.
Basically, imagine 100 strangers on an island trying to survive. And one thing that interests me about that show is there's the doctor, the engineer, the retail person, the model. So the model on this island is completely useless. She has no skills to help survival. The doctor is obviously the most important person. Well, sometimes, I thought as someone with a PhD in computer science, would I be that useful on the island? And it was kind of hard to admit, but I think I wouldn't actually be that useful on that island.
Well, same with me. Someone who hosts a podcast. Well, where's my microphone, everybody? Come on, I gotta keep doing this thing.
Yeah, but the point was if society, if we have a very efficient society where people aren't even making choices and things are just happening, there's food in front of them, they eat it, there's clothes in front of them, they put them on. This could be great. But it's also very different from, kind of the fundamental roots of how we evolved.
But is it great from a perspective of efficiency and business and maybe even profit or just our own material happiness? But is it just from that perspective? But if we look at it from a humanist perspective, is it also great?
That you said that better than I tried to. Yeah, on some levels it's great, like you said, business efficiency. Time management.
Right.
But in terms of being in connection to what it means to be human, being able to take care of yourself, being in touch with the world. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe it's not so great.
Right. And then and I think maybe we have to manage the trade-off somehow. We need to know what we're doing. Is that maybe something, I don't know if this is a question of ethics or morals or just philosophy, but is this a question that you think you'll be dealing with in the program? The ethics of doing AI?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We have a whole course called Ethics of AI. And in fact, a lot of the students that are coming in the program are very interested in this course.
Right.
Maybe you need to expand it to a couple courses because there's just so much to talk about.
Right.
It's not only that, it's things like, who's responsible for an AI system that makes a bad judgment or makes a bad call. Like the classic example is a self-driving car.
Right.
Who's responsible for a crash? It's
right.
The insurance company, the AI developer, the car company, the person who owns the car manufacturer, lots of the city. It's an open question, completely unsolved at this point.
Well, and self-driving cars are interesting because that's an example where we're going to have to program these things, but also have them learn from the data to make decisions according to our philosophy. So, the classic question, if a train is going down the tracks and it's going to hit 5 people for sure, but you can pull a lever and make it hit just one person, do you pull the lever? But if you pull the lever, then you've actively chosen to kill one person. But if you don't pull it, then 5 people die. It's one of these classic dilemmas of morality.
Right.
Do we program a car to swerve into one person, or do we program a car to keep going straight into 5 people? Obviously, I think we would program the car to swerve and hit one person, but still, there's an action being taken by a machine that results in the death of a human being. And the machine will probably have a 99% chance that this is going to happen, knowing this. So how do we program these things? How do we make these decisions on something from a self-driving car, of course, but this will relate to everything as AI and as computers become more and more important in our daily lives.
Mm-hmm. And it actually it's more challenging than that. I went to a seminar in Toronto, and an expert in ethics and AI gave a 2-hour talk on exactly this. And she was talking about, it's hard to answer in one country what's the best thing to do. But consider every country has different religions and philosophies. So how can you make... I think it would be impossible to have one set of rules that everyone's going to say, yeah, that's the best set of rules. I like it. Even in Western society, there's kind of 3 levels of thought of what you should do. One is to minimize the number of lives lost. So in this case, you swerve to hit the one person, no matter who the person is. So, you could have 5 homeless people versus the president. Let's minimize the number of people lost. Mm-hmm. Another one is to take into account the people's age. And, could a car be able to do this? Who knows? But let's just pretend. It might be better to sacrifice someone who's 99 and about to die as opposed to, a newborn who has their whole life ahead of them. And yet another philosophy is to not do anything. So not pull the lever. Let what's going to happen, but don't change anything to kill the innocent bystander.
Right.
And you can get a bunch of people in a room and everyone's going to violently disagree which one of those 3 is the right choice. And it's just in kind of Western society as of today.
Is there an argument to be made that the right choice should be based on the data, that we shouldn't actually give parameters to AI? We should just say, figure it out from the data we give you like everything else, and then the rules that come out, if the data is good, must be good empirical rules. Is that a good way to look at it?
It would be. The challenge here is there's probably not a lot of good training data where we said, training data is where the thing happened a bunch and we can say this was good and this was bad.
Right.
And as of right now, I don't know if there are enough of these kind of tricky scenarios where humans would agree, what the car did was good or what was bad. Because labeling it good or bad, that's kind of getting into the same exact question.
Right.
Because some people say, it swerved and that was good.
Right.
And some people say, it swerved, but that was bad.
And I guess the question could be, is it possible that an AI, whether it's just a specific AI for this or a general AI, could come up with a new conception of good and bad, a new conception of morality? I mean, one version of morality in our context is utilitarianism. So the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So then we can apply that to swerve and hit the 1 or continue to hit the 5. But an AI may come up with a different conception of good and bad, but maybe either be in conflict or maybe an evolution of our current conception. Is that something that is down the road for us that may come quickly or more quickly than we can imagine?
I hope it comes quickly. I think this is certainly, in my opinion, a more challenging problem than the technology piece, than the development of algorithms, the collection of data, and the storage of data. Those are all challenging.
Right.
But they're more engineering problems, and we'll get there. Whereas these ethic problems, there's no easy solution, and I don't. Maybe some great philosopher will come through with an answer and a framework soon. And maybe that won't happen. It's kind of a big question mark at this point.
Right, and you said before that there are different ways we can program a self-driving car. So do we minimize the number of people who are hurt or killed as a result of the accident? But we can also, and you made one example, there's 5 people and then there's one who's the president. But that's a value judgment of one person over others. Well, an AI using data from Amazon and Facebook and Apple and Google can probably pretty quickly determine a person's value according to the system. Now, I mean, as a humanist, we would never say that you're more valuable than anybody else. But a computer may very well say, well, you buy more goods, you're more productive, you do more work, and you, on the other hand, show up to work late and play games all day.
Right.
So is that idea that we actually maybe changing our whole value system going to be influenced by AI?
That's a good question, and that's kind of you're getting to an episode of Black Mirror. I don't know if you've seen that show.
I have, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Where you kind of rate somebody based on their value to society. I hope it doesn't go in that direction. I mean, AI could go in that direction. It could, like you say, know so much about someone as to quantify their worth to society.
Right.
How much do they work? How much they contribute? How much do they pay? Do they follow the rules? Do they drive appropriately? Do they show up at work on time? Do they have 2 kids and a dog and pay their mortgage? All that stuff.
Right.
So that could happen.
And it already is in China with their social credit system.
Right. And I really hope that society pushes back on that and that doesn't happen.
Right.
Yes. So AI, like any tool, it can be used in a lot of good ways and a lot of bad ways. I hope it's used just to make things easier for humans, automate the simple stuff, get rid of the kind of the grind work, the grunt work that no one likes to do, or to take away bias in humans.
Yeah.
But if it goes beyond that and starts judging people or taking away their ability to make decisions for themselves, I think that this is not the direction we want to go.
Right.
The other big risk with AI is these war machines. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Yes.
So think about a drone that can fly anywhere very easily, and it's got this computer vision system on it to recognize faces and moving humans, and it's got these missiles on them, and it just shoots them down, all automatically, and you can send these drones by the hundreds anywhere, and by the time they're detected, the whole village is dead.
Yeah.
So this is a technical reality today, and it's extremely dangerous. And, there's, I'm not fully up to speed, but I believe that there's talks amongst the governments to agree never to make these kind of machines. Just like there were talks to stop using mustard gas and all that stuff after World War I. This is another huge risk because as the technology advances, there are going to be some countries who want to use this for evil, we can say. And I sincerely hope that doesn't happen because that would be a complete disaster and so much devastation could occur before any response can be made.
Right. Well, we know that militaries such as China and the United States are pursuing AI quite strongly. There was an Economist special report, I don't remember when, it was a few months ago, about AI and its effect on warfare. And it went quite into depth into how this is going to change how war happens, how war works, how drones fly and what they can do, but far, far deeper than that as well. But what was interesting is the implication that this special report had, which is that if you're a country that wants to win a war, you need to know and get behind this technology and do it quickly. And so, like you say, there are potential agreements between countries never to use this stuff for bad purposes. But if one country doesn't sign it and gets ahead of them, they could possibly win a future war, and that would encourage the others, say, not to sign the agreement or to renege on the agreement. And we're dealing with a really tricky situation of, whoever gets there first, right? It's almost like colonialism in the 15th and 16th century all over again, or the slave trade, for example. It's such an awful thing to have happened in human history. But at the time, people who weren't trading slaves felt like they were falling behind on the trade, even though it was a completely immoral act. And I think that when you talk about warfare, it's key that we understand this, I think, and understand what the ramifications are so that we as humans can make the right decisions.
And it's similar to the kind of nuclear arms race.
Yeah.
No one wants nuclear arms, but no one wants to be the only country without nuclear arms. Or even no one wants your enemy to have nuclear arms, but you don't.
Right.
So it's probably going to follow a similar path where everyone races to develop the technology, and then eventually, hopefully, there's agreements in place with inspections and bilateral cooperation to make sure no one has it. That's what I'm hoping. I mean, that's kind of the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is everyone's developing this in the basement, doesn't tell anyone else, and then one person pulls the trigger, and then everyone pulls the trigger, and millions of lives are lost.
Right. Which is kind of a segue to my last question, or series of questions maybe, general AI. So just for our listeners, what is general AI? What's the difference between that and what we've been talking about? And then therefore, what are the ramifications of that?
Yeah, so artificial general intelligence, AGI, is completely different from what we were talking about so far. And unfortunately, a lot of people who are outside the field kind of confuse the two, and we can thank movies like The Terminator for that. But, when we talk about machine learning, and I kind of alluded this before, these algorithms are very dumb. They're not intelligent in any way. They're just counting what it sees in the millions of training data and then saying, oh, most of the time when someone buys diapers, they also buy bottles. That's it. They're making a prediction. It's based on the data, but it doesn't even know what a diaper or a bottle is. It's just these are just two item IDs. That's it. Artificial general intelligence is the idea that a computer becomes self-aware, starts making decisions for itself, and usually it becomes evil from a human's point of view because it's going to try to optimize the human out of the loop and all this stuff. Or there's things like the Matrix, where the machines need to harvest humans for their energy. Yeah. Or the Terminator, things like that. So there's kind of two camps. There's the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world who say artificial general intelligence is either impossible or a long way away. It's just a really hard problem to solve. And then you have the Elon Musks of the world who think it's going to happen. It's going to happen sooner than we think. And as long as we keep making progress like we are, it's going to come. And so we need to be prepared because this is going to ruin society as we know it. I tend to fall closer to the Zuckerberg camp, where anyone who's kind of worked with these machine learning, natural language processing algorithms, while they do useful things today, they are, underneath the hood, they are really dumb. And even though Google built an algorithm that can beat a human at chess and Go and all these games, which is a great, tremendous feat, that same system can literally do nothing else. It doesn't even understand what it's doing. It can't play any other games. It can't talk to anybody. It doesn't know what a game is. It doesn't know what the world is. It can't walk. It can't eat. It doesn't. It's so far away from intelligence as we would define intelligence in a human to make connections. So the state of the art is, I would say, one step in a billion towards artificial general intelligence. That's just my personal opinion. People will violently disagree with me. Some people say even if that's true, we need to be ready and have rules in place, and that's fine. We can think through all that. I think it's a little premature.
You mentioned that looking at a particular algorithm, it's quite dumb. It only does one specific thing. And I just had the thought that if you look at a human person, and I don't mean to be too much of a devil's advocate, but if you look at a human being, my heart does one thing and does it really, really well. My liver does one thing and does it really, really well. Other than that, though, they're quite useless. But you combine these things together, and I have not only a whole body, but a whole body that has consciousness. And if I were to look at a human being, say from an alien perspective 10,000 years from now, I will see someone who just does simple things. I may not see them as quite really even sentient, let alone conscious, but yet we think of ourselves as such. Is it possible? I guess I know it's possible, but what do you think of the idea that all of these things together may be forming consciousness and sentience, again, are the wrong words to use, but something that we don't quite perceive yet for what it really is?
That's a good question. And you're right. This robot, this artificial general intelligence will be made of several parts. There'll be a machine learning part, a vision part. They'll plug them all together. I think the hardest thing to replicate of a human, though, is the brain. And, being able to make decisions based on lots of stimuli instantly and connect them with what it's seen the rest of its life instantaneously. It's really quite remarkable. I've been watching my 3 kids grow up, and watching them learn for any parent is fascinating.
Yeah.
But I watch them learn through the lens of someone who's trying to get computers to learn. And I'm just blown away how humans can learn with such little training data.
Right.
I got, with my son who's 1, we flip the book every night and I say, that's a lion. It gets one picture of a lion. And then the next picture I say, that's a giraffe. It gets one picture of a giraffe. And the next day he knows the difference between the two. One example of each. Machine learning algorithms need millions of examples of each. But, like I said, we'll certainly make progress toward general intelligence. But I think maybe it's the wrong question. Think of the Wright brothers and flight. 100, 150 years ago, humans decided they want to fly, so they looked at the bird, and they tried to replicate the bird's wings and flapping and stuff, and they failed significantly, fantastically. And it wasn't until the Wright brothers thought, hey, we don't need to replicate the bird. We just want to fly. So it started, building the fixed structure of the wings, and now we have planes that work.
Right.
Same thing. Maybe we don't want to build something that's just like a human and that can do exactly what a baby human can do and learn that way. Maybe we just want a machine that can send us what we want, send us the groceries we need. That's it. Doesn't need to understand the world.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I've said this before on the show, but the one of the inventors of Watson, IBM's Watson, said was asked, "Is this conscious? Is this machine that you've created? Is it conscious?" And he said, "Well, in answer to your question, can a submarine swim?" Well, no, I guess we wouldn't say that a submarine swims, but it does almost all the same things that, say, a whale does. And so. Yeah, I think that this is such an exciting endeavor for business. I mean, for you and what you're doing, I can't imagine that you'd be wanting to do anything else in any other field. I mean, this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it really is. It's an exciting time to be alive. There's so much to be done, so many ripe opportunities in every part of every business and every industry.
Yeah, and I imagine students are feeling the same.
Yeah, we've had a tremendous interest in the program so far. This first year, which we're launching in September, I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
That's our show. Thank you for listening to What on Earth is Going On. Remember that all episodes are available as a podcast, and they can be accessed through any podcast app or found on the website, along with links to social media at wogoshow.com. I would love to get your feedback, questions, criticisms, and suggestions. Your quote of the week is from Vladimir Putin, president of Russia. It's from last year, and you may have heard it before, but the quote bears repeating, because what he says about artificial intelligence is revealing about not only his intentions, but the current game being played at all levels of business and geopolitics. Even if it does not turn out to be true, though it's hard to imagine that Putin is wrong. Here goes. Quote, artificial intelligence is the future, not only for Russia, but for all humankind. It comes with colossal opportunities, but also threats that are difficult to predict. Whoever becomes the leader in this sphere will become the ruler of the world. Close quote. Thanks for listening.